The first story is titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my dad to drive me home in the middle of my engagement dinner? I, 26 female, just got engaged to my fiance, 32 male, who's the only son my future mother-in-law has, and she's incredibly involved in his adult life. At first, that didn't bother me, as I see it as a good thing that he has a good relationship with his mom, but it started getting worse, with her constantly getting involved in my personal life as well. His family decided to have a small celebration for our engagement, and they invited my family for dinner. I wasn't so comfortable with having a celebration because I felt that my fiancé and I should decide whether we wanted or not. Anyways, I had my mom, dad, and brother attended. We met some of his family members there as well. Things were going fine, till my mother-in-law talked about wedding/honeymoon and stuff like that. My fiancé was talking and I just sat there listening. She then started talking about future grandkids, and this is when I got uncomfortable. I'm living child-free and planning on living child-free all my life, and I think that is mostly because of experiencing a traumatic death of my younger sibling, my sister, who was sick, and I was the closest one to her. She was young, and during her sickness, I felt like I was being a mother to her. My parents knew how much her and I were connected, and her death was so devastating. I will never know what it feels like to lose a child, but losing her felt like a piece of me was gone. I don't want kids, thinking they'd be gone one day, and I'll have to deal with this awful pain for the rest of my life, like how I'm dealing with my sister's death. I already discussed this with my fiancé, but instead of telling her to drop it, he just let her go on. My parents noticed her behavior. My dad told her that I wasn't planning on being a mom, but she just laughed it off and said that I'll change my mind, then started making a toast. She made a toast saying, "To my future grandchildren." I got sick of it. I quietly told my fiancé that I wanted to leave, but he told me to wait. I turned to my dad and asked him if he could drive me home, and my family all got ready to leave. My mother-in-law tried to pressure us into staying, but we left eventually. In about 30 minutes after her guests left, I got a call from my fiancé telling me his mom wants to talk. He gave her his phone, and she blew up on me for walking out and embarrassing her in front of her guests, and brought up the kids' topic and said that she get a say in that. She berated me for 5 minutes, then hung up on me. My fiancé called back, but I ignored him. I went home with my family feeling awful. The whole situation sucks. And I cried, feeling hurt by them and their lack of consideration, and them just steamrolling my decisions as a person like that. Now let's read the top comments. Your mother-in-law is only part of your problem. The bigger problem is that your fiancé supports her and not you. He handed her the phone so she could berate you after leaving a dinner where she insulted you and tried to dictate whether you'd have children. Consider this a preview of what it will be like to be married to her, because you essentially will be. Not the a-hole, but proceed with caution. Your spouse is literally supposed to be your partner, and before all others, for a damned reason. Absolutely not the a-hole. And I'd be really worried your fiancé did not back you up. I don't often say this, but you should consider breaking off the engagement. This does not bode well for the marriage. He let his mother say all these things without taking any action. He let her scold me and even trick me into thinking he wanted to talk to me. Then gave her the phone and she kept berating me for leaving while she didn't stop ignoring my feelings and how that topic is so sensitive to me and very personal. I'm done with her constantly trying to get involved in everything I do. Just because my fiancé lets her, that doesn't mean she has a right to dictate how I live and what decisions I make. She's so selfish and inconsiderate and has no respect for others' feelings. I'm sorry, hun. Your fiancé is being an a-hole too. If he's not able to establish boundaries for her, this wedding should not happen. Not the a-hole. Do not marry this guy. He will always put his mother first, and he will never have your back. If you ignore my advice and stay with him, use long-term birth control, implant or IUD, that can't be tampered with, and maintain your own bank account for your income/savings. Because his mother can't be trusted not to mess with your birth control, and your fiancé will give his mother your savings if she asks for it. OP, listen to this. I don't think you should marry him. Clearly, it's your life. Like, you do you, girl. But if you leave him, let them both know why. It's because of her and him, of course. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for locking my husband out of our bedroom after our wedding reception? The title sounds bad, but hear me out. We were high school sweethearts and met at 14. We dated for 6 years before getting married, and it was clear that he's always been extremely close with his mother. She's always been trying to convince him that we shouldn't be together. Even when we were teens, she was trying to break us up. When we first announced our engagement, she freaked out. She told him, "You won't have a future with her. You're too young, you don't know what you're doing." She even told him he can do better than me. So, the wedding reception came, and it was a small family affair at my older sister's house since she has the yard space for our families to come. She never even came by to help us set up. It was mostly just my family and me. The entire reception was more like a party. It wasn't a traditional walk-down-the-aisle wedding, but our most important family and friends were in attendance. The entire night, my soon-to-be husband sat at a table with his mom. I let it go because I didn't want to have a fight at our wedding. We still did traditional things like sharing vows, taking pictures, cutting the cake, etc. But besides those moments, it was like I barely saw him. When it came to cut the cake, he took the first slice over to his mother. I was upset because the first slice should go to the people actually getting married, but again, I let it slide. I spent my wedding at a table with my best friend and my 14-year-old brother-in-law. The night after the reception, we got into it because it didn't help once with the wedding, and for all the reasons above. And just when we were getting home, he tosses the cake in the fridge without covering it or anything. Here's where I may be an a-hole, because I started asking him to wrap the cake and we got into a huge fight about it, if it was fine or not. I felt just done with the whole day, went into our room and locked the door. I was so mad I eventually ended up falling asleep, and he slept in the couch on our wedding night. I didn't mean to fall asleep, I just wanted some space for a bit. We've been fighting on and off since, and his mother has called me a bridezilla more than once, so I'm starting to doubt myself. Am I the a-hole here for not allowing my new husband into our bedroom on our wedding night? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, annulment. He's already married to his mother. Nailed it. 110%. Get out of this relationship. Speaking from experience, this doesn't get better, and he won't change. This is an everyone sucks here for me. You married a mama's boy at 20 years old. That was your choice. He showed you that he still had a lot of growing to do, and you still married him anyway. What did you expect would happen? When deciding who to marry, you have to consider the in-laws that come with it. Yikes all the way around. You knew this woman for 6 years, Opie? Everyone sucks here. This is not an advice sub, but here's some from an older, happily married lady. Young couples either grow together or grow apart. If you want to be the former and not the latter, get comfortable with saying, "I felt hurt when you," and "I realized that what I did was hurtful. I am sorry, and I'm going to work hard not to do that again." Because marital problems are not you versus him. They are you and him versus the problem. That is, it's not you versus husband and mother-in-law, but you and husband versus how mother-in-law treats you and how he prioritized the two of you in his life. If you need some space, say it. If you feel insecure, say it. If you feel overlooked, underappreciated, mad, etc., say it. Pettiness, passive-aggressive BS, and silence will murder your relationship, so open up. Yeah, it's scary. But if there is anyone out there whom you can be vulnerable with, it's your spouse. Edit. To quickly address the comments below. People don't change, but they do grow. You are not the person you were 5 years ago and 5 years from now. You look at the person you are today and sometimes shake your head. People also make mistakes. Stupid, careless, obvious mistakes. I am not placing all the blame or putting all the effort on Opie's shoulders. They will both have to learn to give each other grace and the benefit of doubt to grow as a couple together. Please keep in mind that Opie is giving us a few paragraphs on the things about her husband that piss her off the most. Of course, the reaction is, "What a S-head. Drop him like he's the beat. Thanks, I'll show myself out." That's how Reddit works. That's not how a good marriage works. Here's a little update from the poster. Edit. I'm overwhelmed by the response, so I'll answer a few questions. Some people have said that I locked him out because of the cake argument. For me, it was the icing on the night, so to speak. Pun not intended. I told him I needed space, and when I went into the room, I stayed on the floor crying until I fell asleep, and I apologized for it the next morning. Locking him out was not my intent, but intention rarely affects the impact of the actions, and I do see that. A few people suggested that he spent the wedding with his mom because she was alone. She wasn't. His father, his brother, his aunts and cousins were all there. She absolutely was not the only member of his family in the guest list. Regardless of how it sounds, I do love him, which is why I agreed to marry him. His mother was against us because we met online. We have lived together for 2 years in a basement apartment. Full bedroom, bath, living room, and kitchen. That's connected to my mom's house, but that's to save money for now. The wedding felt like the next step in a relationship, but a lot of people are telling me we should have waited or to get an annulment or divorce. We have a lot to work on, but I don't think it's that level yet. I'm going to try to catch up with all the comments, but there are so many notifications that when I scroll through them, it glitches and jumps to the top. Now for the last story, am I the a-hole for gifting my step-niece my engagement ring rather than my biological one? I'm 35 and I have an older brother who has 3 kids with his wife. 2 are biologically his. His oldest is Abby, who is 22. He married Abby's mom when Abby was 3 and adopted her when she was 10. Their middle child is Stephanie, age 17. Abby has always been treated as a part of our family, especially since her bio family are very distant. I was only 16 when she became my niece, and she was like a little sister to me. Abby got engaged this year, and I offered her my original wedding ring. The diamonds in it were originally my grandmother's, who gave it to my mother, who gave it to me. I only have boys, so I wanted to give it to Abby to keep the tradition alive. Abby was ecstatic. My sister-in-law and brother were also appreciative of the gift. The issue, I think, stems from my mother. She was disappointed I didn't save the ring for Stephanie. The ring has always gone to the woman that marries first in the family, and I pointed that out to her, but she insisted it should stay in our family. That is, blood relation, and that it wasn't fair to Steph. Abby ended up contacting me and asked if I wanted the ring back, and said she felt bad about accepting it and told me it would be better going to a future daughter-in-law of mine. I insisted she keep it. I'm pretty sure Abby didn't feel suddenly guilty all on her own, but she didn't say why she had a change of heart. I asked my brother what was going on and he said Steph had been jealous and pouty and Abby felt bad. My mom said I should have taken the ring back and that I'm causing unnecessary drama between sisters and has been very I told you so about this. I personally think she has something to do with the whole situation, although she hasn't admitted it. Am I the a-hole for maybe causing my nieces to fight over this? Not the a-hole. Awfully bold of her to claim you are causing drama when she is the one making trouble over it. Opie is probably right on the money. This didn't come from nowhere. Grandma is stirring the pot because she doesn't think of Abby as her grandkid. She said as much when she felt the need to specify our family. Call her out on this BS, Opie. Abby has been a part of your family for 2 decades and your mom is being needlessly cruel. Not the a-hole. This is like saying an adopted child is not a real member of the family, which is pretty reprehensible in my opinion. Her mother and younger niece are disgusting, though I'll give the niece more of a pass, as she's still young and dumb. So, Opie is not the a-hole, but mom is, and Opie's bro and sister-in-law are too. If they have in any way allowed younger niece to believe she's more special because she's a bio kid. Just ick all around, except for Opie and Abby. Not the a-hole. If your brother got recently married, it'd be one thing. But he raised Abby since she was 3. He's been her father her whole life. I don't think it caused your nieces to fight, but definitely your mom pressuring your other niece and causing tension between everyone. I don't think from what you're saying your mom has enough gusto to say anything to her face. Don't back down because family isn't about blood. It's about a lot of different other things. Not the a-hole. And that's the end of the video, folks. As always, leave your comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like the content. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing pay for college for a child I have no legal obligation to anymore? For the sake of length, I'll try to stick to the facts and keep it brief. I, 50 male, legally have 3 children with my ex, 51, Adam, 23 male, Chris, 21 male, and Sophie, 18 female. Biologically, the first 2 children are mine, and youngest is the result of my wife's infidelity. I discovered this the day when Sophie was 2-year-old, and we had to rush Sophie to the emergency room. I filed for divorce 2 months later. I got 50-50 custody of my own children, but since Sophie was legally mine, I had to pay child support for her and was very bitter and resentful about it. I tried to fight it at first, but in the end, decided to suck it up to save myself the stress. But I made it very clear to my ex that outside of child support, I would take no other responsibility for the girl and would shut down any attempts at being her father. But I would make the effort to still be polite to Sophie. After some time, I learned to trust again and remarried a wonderful woman who made it very clear that she and her daughter were a package deal. I accepted this and did everything I could to try and be there for my stepdaughter, Katie, 17 female. Aside from typical ups and downs, I would say I managed to make a great family life for myself. We'd have family nights. I attended most after-school events, took my family on fun vacations, and put my sons through school and paid for their apartments and cars. They were on their own for gas money. Chris is expected to graduate this coming summer, and I made a silly post on social media about how relieved I was going to be that I only had one more kid to put through school left. A couple of days later, I got a message from my ex asking me to pay for Sophie's college expenses on my own, since the pandemic has made money tight. I asked her what she meant, and she referred to my post. And I reminded her that my legal obligation to Sophie ended the day she turned 18, and that I was talking about Katie. My ex was furious, demanded to know why I was willing to pay for Katie and not Sophie, since neither of them are related to me. I countered by saying that I knew up front Katie wasn't my biological child, and agreed to care for her instead of being conned into doing it like I was for Sophie. After that, I got a call from Sophie, asking what she did to make me hate her so much and to leave her feeling so excluded. I told her softly that I don't hate her, and that nothing about this situation was her fault, but the simple truth is that it wasn't personal. I'm just not her father. Since then, my sons have told me that Sophie was becoming really depressed. My ex is blaming me, but I don't see what I have to do with it. Am I the a-hole? Edit, just to be clear because I keep seeing the same questions. 1. The kids know why I divorced their mother. 2. My ex claims that Sophie was the result of a one-night stand and doesn't know who her father is, which is one of the reasons why I was kept on the hook for child support. 3. After I learned the truth, I was very angry and didn't think I could handle raising a child that I was tricked into caring for, so I decided to keep my distance. 4. Just because Sophie wasn't mine and I treated as such doesn't mean that I was horrible to the girl. I also made sure that my children knew that what happened between their mother and me was not Sophie's fault and they should never be mean to her. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. That poor girl. You don't have any legal or moral obligation to her, but she's taking the brunt of the consequences for your failed relationship, and none of this is her fault. Opie's not the one who failed in that relationship. It was her parents that were the failures. Regardless of the who's in the wrong question here, the grim reality is that Opie should be prepared to lose his sons. Some things that shouldn't necessarily be sides issues are going to end up being that way anyways. Of course, it has always been incredibly upsetting and confusing to Sophie that her legal father is distant and stilted with her while having a relationship with her brothers. And of course, her brothers have grown up witnessing that grief and have complicated feelings about it themselves. To children, that would come across as arbitrary cruelty. As young adults, they may understand it intellectually, but that doesn't mean they feel it the way Opie does. Now it is coming to a head, with Sophie realizing her adult life is going to be dramatically harder than her brothers, again, through no fault of hers, and her brothers can appreciate that that is brutally unfair, and they're all at home together experiencing this collective trauma of quarantine. And Opie is in a different home, with a different family that he has chosen for himself. That by no means makes him an a-hole, but in his son's position, I couldn't imagine my heart not breaking for my sister and feeling with resentment for my father. It can be no a-holes here, but still be a no-win situation where Opie will have to make the choices he makes and have to live with the consequences. I guess technically not the a-hole, but it's hard to wrap my head around loving a child for 2 years, then stopping, since she wasn't biologically yours. Well, realizing that you were lied to and tricked into being someone's parent can play a huge role into it. Not the a-hole, your ex knew that Sophie was not yours. You made it clear you were done supporting her once you were no longer legally responsible. There is one huge a-hole in this. That is your ex. 1. She cheated on you. Had you believing you were the child's father, and had you stopped paying child support until Sophie was 18. 2. Your ex was too selfish to plan for Sophie's education. That is her fault, not yours. I just want to add that Katie has nothing to do with this. Whether you had a stepdaughter or not, you would not be paying for Sophie's education. So, your ex or anyone else should not be bringing up the fact you're willing to pay for Katie's education, but not Sophie's. The two things are mutually exclusive of each other. Just happen to be the same thing. I hope that last part made sense. Now for the second story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she didn't do crap in raising me? I, 25 female, have had a terrible relationship with my mother for most of my life. She has been pretty abusive emotionally throughout my life, doing things like taking away my bed so I had to sleep on the floor, locking away groceries so I had no food, giving away all my clothes to my younger sister, not letting me date or hang out with friends, etc. The rest of the family acknowledges she hasn't treated me well, but doesn't think she was abusive, and that I could have handled things better by compromising more. My dad separated from her when I was 6 and took my older sisters to live with his new wife. Mom got custody of me, but he has continued to pay for everything from my education. I got scholarships from high school to med school, and money for my share of the house utilities, etc. I even had to buy things like tampons out of an allowance he gave me, because she refused to, saying they were too expensive. Where I live, we have no concept of child protection, and parents are pretty much never ever considered to be wrong. Doing the bare minimum is seen as doing a favor to your child, so for almost 24 years, I've had to live with her abuse, and despite that, I've done pretty well in life. I graduated from med school recently and am moving soon to a different country for my new job. She started going on and on about how I should stay home to take care of her because she's invested her whole life in raising me. 24/7, she'll try to emotionally manipulate and guilt trip me into being her unpaid caretaker. I tried to ignore her at first, but she kept listing out things like, I paid for your food, I gave you so many privileges and spent so much on you, so I got mad and told her she didn't do crap for me. I told her I never asked to be born, and she's not special for doing the absolute minimum for a child she brought into this world on purpose. She started crying and called my dad and sisters up, saying I was ungrateful and deliberately emotionally torturing her when she was sick. They're all telling me I am the a-hole because she has raised me for 25 years of my life and done her best, and that I didn't need to engage with her and create unnecessary drama when I'm going to be leaving soon anyway, especially since she has a chronic illness. So, am I the a-hole for denying her contribution to my upbringing and upsetting her for no reason? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole at all. If you do the bare minimum for me, I'll do the same for you. She never even paid for most of your stuff. It was your dad. Correct me if I'm wrong. Using the family to get on her side makes her an even worse a-hole. I'm really glad you left that house. Sounds horrible. You're correct. My dad paid for mostly everything. She occasionally bought groceries, but that was it. Not the a-hole. You just have a higher consciousness of right/wrong, and she is trapped by cultural constraints you don't want to continue in your life. On the flip side, she is scared of empty nest changes. Chalk it up to a blow-up confrontation. Forgive her and pursue your life. Maybe if you make good enough money, you can help her out, but your obligation is limited. Not the a-hole. Mom should have treated you better if she was expecting filial care from you, but from what you described, it sounds like classic narcissism. Your dad and sisters would also do well to remember that there's a reason why your dad separated from your mother. Not the a-hole. The sooner you can get away from this toxic family, the better. I wish you all the best in your new job. If your dad and sisters are so sympathetic to her, they can move back in with her. It's especially hypocritical of your dad, who ditched you and your mom when you were only 6, to try and guilt trip you into serving her for life. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not forgiving my parents? I, 34 female, grew up with one sibling, 36 female, and both parents. There were various kinds of abuse. My sister was also the golden child. I came out as gay when I was 16. They interrogated me until I admitted. They then taped a letter to my door indicating that I was going to hell. There were then various books in the house about how to cure homosexuality. I'm positive if my sister had been gay, they would have led pride parades. I left. I stayed with friends, partners, and well, anyone, until I could obtain some security a few years later. At first, I still went to family functions, but my parents wouldn't speak to me. My mother did not look at me. I did this for a few years until the anxiety was too much. Then, I only went to family events they weren't attending. They bought my sister a car, paid for her college, and all of her living expenses. I also attended college, had to go through a process I wouldn't have to claim them on my FA/FSA. Therapist wrote a letter, and did graduate. But had given myself an ulcer due to the stress of being a full-time student with 2 jobs and a 16-hour unpaid internship. My parents only sent happy birthday texts. Then came my sister's wedding. She had 5 events I had to attend. I was a bridesmaid. During all of these events, they again didn't look at me. It was painful. About 2 years after this, They sent a text indicating that they wanted to give me money for the same amount they spent on my sister's wedding. I discussed with my therapist, and my therapist indicated my parents opted not to give me a lot of things I needed. But that doesn't mean I should feel shameful about taking what they are offering if there are no strings attached. So, I met with them for lunch with my then girlfriend. My dad did speak to me but spoke mostly about other trivial family matters, and my mother spoke only through my father. She would whisper something to my father, and he would then ask a question. They gave me a check for $10,000. My dad said something vaguely about being proud of everything I have overcome. I internally was very confused. Did they mean their own abuse? Their own homophobia? They never asked to see me again. I used the money as part of the down payment for my house. Married my wife a few years later. I did not tell them. I didn't hear from them for a few years, other than the birthday messages. But in 2017, we began fostering. We took placement of a very sweet 14-month-old boy we adopted when he was 2.5 years old. I should mention my sister is child-free by choice. Since the adoption, I did not tell them. Any number of relatives could. My parents suddenly are vaguely sorry and now sending me weekly text messages. When I eventually indicated I felt this was only because of my child, they reportedly stated they didn't even know I had a child. They, however, not asked my child's name, age, how he came into existence, etc. They are now passively inviting me to various Zoom family events and really trying to have conversations. Am I the a-hole for not forgiving them? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. You don't need them in your life. If you're comfortable with the low contact, just continue that, or go no contact if you want. Be sure to tell them why. Not the a-hole. In what world would you be the a-hole here? You've done fantastic for yourself in spite of them, not because of them. Go you. There is truly a lot I couldn't post because of the character limit. So my parents will text these apologies and truthfully, I won't respond. They then show these messages to family members who lack a lot of context. That is, I have not told them about the abuse and only vaguely spoken about their homophobia. And then they basically tell me I am a cold and unforgiving. If your parents are spreading lies, enlighten them on the truth. Don't let them paint you in a bad light just because you won't give them what they want, when they wouldn't even give you a scrap of love that you deserved and treated you like an outcast. I guess they aren't really lying. They're apologizing and I am not responding. They, of course, aren't going to divulge the abuse. When they are asked why we don't talk, they say something about me making poor life choices, which in my family means I'm using drugs. Hard drugs. I've had to explain I'm not. In fact, addicted to heroin more times than any adult ever should. I guess I struggle just putting it all out there, both because trauma/PTSD is real here, and because my goal isn't to vilify people. My parents somehow are functional outside of our household. I've not seen the same toxic behavior in their other relationship, and I'm not down to burn down the whole metaphorical house. Maybe I'm being naive here. Not the a-hole. They haven't asked for forgiveness. They may think slipping you $10,000 was enough, but it doesn't really make up for anything. Do you still have a relationship with your sister? Off and on. They sometimes use her as a way to force the relationship. That is, she cornered my wife, telling her she needed to convince me to forgive them, and they deserve to have a relationship with their grandchild. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.